Looks like you're in the Pentagon, man.
I'm just waiting for
I know, right?
Good afternoon and welcome to the Veteran Network, VetNet. My name is Elvis Avdic, and I work here for Institute for Veterans and Military Families, and this session of VetNet is brought to you by IVMF. IVMF has a portfolio of programs that help veterans and their family members start and grow their business, as well transition and start and grow their careers. We also are engaged in research and development and community work as well. Last year alone, we serviced over 32,000 veterans, and if you'd like more information on it, you can always visit us at ivmf.syracuse.edu. And today our session is on one of our community work programs, AmericaServes, and we have with us Blake and Matt. I will pass on to them for them to introduce themselves. Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Elvis. Good afternoon, everyone. As Elvis said, my name is Matt Feldhaus. I'm a program manager for the Institute for Veterans and Military Families. I've been working there for close to 2 years now. It'll be 2 years in winter. I am a 6-year Army vet. I did 6 years with the Army National Guard in Pennsylvania. I was an Army linguist, and if anyone's familiar, a 35 Mike, which is a human intelligence collector. And this, this program, AmericaServes, is really close to me because when I got out of the military, I was sold on the, hey, when you get out of the military, especially with, speaking Arabic fluently, having an associate's in intelligence, and I did college at Allegheny College in Pennsylvania before joining the military. I thought I'd be a shoo-in. But when I got done with training at the Defense Language Institute, came back, I could not get a job. I got told so many times that I didn't have any work experience, and then ended up having to go file for unemployment, was on food stamps, and it took me about 4 months before I sucked it up and got a job at the local Apple store, selling iPads, training on how to use your Mac and things like that at the local mall. Fast forward a year and a half, I was working at Apple Corporate, and I came to meet Jim McDonough, who's the managing director of IVMF. I was working for the Apple Veterans Program and was getting a little frustrated with what they're not doing for veterans with all of their resources. And Jim said, why don't you come work for me and, be a boots on the ground working for veterans, and haven't looked back ever since. So really close to my heart. I get to work with great people like Blake, who are passionate about veterans, passionate about serving their community and making it a better place. So pass it over to Blake to introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I'm Blake Ford. I'm the executive director of Charlotte Bridge Home. We're a local 501c3 nonprofit in Charlotte, North Carolina. My background, I was an Army infantry officer for 6 years, from 2006 to 2012. Moved to Charlotte, not too dissimilar from Matt. Got kicked in the gut a couple times in some job interviews, and it was a stay-at-home dad actually for that first year. And then met a few veterans, learned about this organization, and was hired to work with our employer partners. Then about 2 years in, I shifted focus to work with Syracuse and Jim McDonough to become the second network within AmericaServes, which we're here to talk about today. But now I'm the executive director. It's been for about 18 months now, and the organization is 6 years old, and we act as a hub or quarterback in Charlotte for employers, so finding the best companies for veterans to work for, finding the best nonprofits and coordinating service between them on the NC Serves platform, and then also building social capital. So we have an outreach program that brings veterans together through physical fitness, volunteering, and outreach and networking events so that they can support one another. So excited to be here today. Big believer, and have been on the ground with Jim for 3 years now and doing this work. So excited to share some of the lessons learned and the work we're doing. Thanks, Elvis.
Awesome. So the way, since me and Blake are co-hosting this webinar, what we thought we would do is I'd kick it off, set the stage of what AmericaServes is as a program, where it kind of fits in throughout the nation, and a little bit about how that looks in, and overall how that would look. And then if there aren't, any direct questions towards that, kick it over to Blake, who can talk about how an actual community, how that works within a community, and how that works within his coordination center, as he mentioned. So just setting the stage of what that would look like. So AmericaServes is a national scope program that looks to coordinate services of providers within a community, and it does so via a online program technology called Unite Us. So if you want to break that down, it coordinates the public, private, and nonprofit organizations that already have relationships within a community, but it does so in a more efficient and better way, and that's through that technology. So if we wanted to kind of give a what the system was like before, that might give you an idea of what it looked like. So if I was a veteran in Cincinnati, or let's just say Charlotte, and I went to Blake's organization and I was looking for employment, and they have employment services, he would be able to help me, great. But when I had financial needs, or I needed to get my benefits worked out and things like that, and his organization didn't do that, that's when Blake and his team ended up having to, look through their Rolodex, send out some emails, maybe even go Google online and find some, attempt to find some resources. Possibly he knows people, possibly he's just giving me a list of places, shakes my hand and says, good luck. After that, he has no idea what happens. If he's a superstar, he might give me a call a week or two from then and ask me, hey, were you able to get your benefits and things worked out? But besides that, there's no really tracking. And then me, the service, the client, has a much tougher time doing that. I'm missing work when I'm going to these meetings, and I'm getting frustrated. So that was the old way, which is happening throughout the nation still. But there is a new way. And so here in Charlotte, for example, or the AmericaServes Metrolina community, what I could do in that same scenario is that if there are needs outside of what Blake and his organization offer, instead of sending me with a big list of names, he's part of that coordinated network of 56 different organizations that he can make an online referral and then send it to 2 different organizations, one that works with benefits and one that works with financial management. Or I can't even remember what I used as that example, but financial management, for example. And then thus me, the client, doesn't have to go, do all those different meetings and, hear those no's or yeses or whatever it would be. And then Blake can also, follow up on that looking inside the software. So I wanted to give a short story. I know Blake will probably be able to go into this in more detail, but it sets the stage of what it was like before, a little bit more anecdotally what it kind of looks like in the future. So, or, currently in our different markets. So the first network to go live was in New York City. And since then, there are now, I believe, 11 different networks. So it might be a good idea to, copy down to see if your area has one. So in New York, there are 2 networks, AmericaServes Upstate and AmericaServes New York City. Upstate's focused on like Buffalo and Rochester area. There's soon to be one in Rhode Island. There is 4 currently in North Carolina. I'm saying 4. AmericaServes Western, which is around Asheville, launches August 3rd. And that will be the 4th network in the great state of North Carolina, who's really leading the way in serving veterans, their family members, and service members. The other 3 are AmericaServes Metrolina, which is here in Charlotte in the surrounding area. AmericaServes Coastal, which is over in Camp Lejeune for all my Marine friends, in that Jacksonville surrounding area. And then RDU Fayetteville, so the Raleigh-Durham, Fayetteville area. is the fourth. There's a AmericaServes Greater Pittsburgh, which was the third market. And when I just got hired, that was the first market I worked with all my affiliations with Pennsylvania and going to school there. There is an NSC Serves in South Carolina, which is kind of centered around Charleston as the hub. There is soon to be based in San Antonio, and then there's going to be a second one that are, the discussions are starting now for a Dallas market as well. And then there is an affiliated market in Virginia called Southampton Roads. But there's also going to be one around the capital region, right around like Washington area as well. So those are all the different markets that are coming. It's really cool to be a part of this and see it grow as these communities are adopting, what I think is going to be the future of service delivery. So I gave a little bit of information about what AmericaServes is as a program and what it looks to save. Who it services are veterans, service members, and their families. So I think it's really important, the family aspect, so that spouses, children can also, hope to get the assistance, because often a lot of programs focus solely on that service member or veteran. This program works with, their families as well. And really what it's looking to do is help with the navigation of services. There's been a number of studies that are saying, the most difficult time for a service member is that transition, getting out of the service when you had everything there for you. Uncle Sam took care of you, told you what to wear, where to go, where you're housing, where to be, et cetera. We all know that. We're all service members, or some of us are affiliated with it still. But after that, what do we do? There's 40,000, I believe, registered nonprofits that work with veterans in some way across this country. How do you decide which one's the good one? Which one's not going to try and take advantage of you? Which one is, going to give you the best care? And really, that's difficult to uncover. So what this helps to do is with that navigation of all the different resources that are out there, and make it more simple for that service member, the veteran, or their family member. So it's, my boss, Jim, always says it's about getting the right client to the right provider in the quickest time as possible. And really that's, the goal. A big piece of it is the technology behind it. I don't want to go too far into the weeds with the technology at this point. I want to give Blake an opportunity to kind of talk about where his organization and where that coordination center fits into the mix, because I think that's important. And then we can maybe dive into what is the purpose of the technology, what are some of the benefits that we've seen through the capturing of the data and the transparency behind service delivery. And then from there, I think we can, flesh out if there's some other questions and just see where the conversation goes. So Blake, I hope I didn't steal too much of your thunder talking about the problem, but I want to toss it over to you to be able to talk about, your organization and how that works and everything.
Yeah, no, thanks, man. I think you did a great job of outlining, the kind of what AmericaServes is all about, who it's meant to serve, a little bit about how. I'd like to touch on a little bit about the why. I think from speaking to Elvis, I think a good bit of the audience today are either service members, veterans, or family members. So thank you for your service. Thank you for continued service. The why for me is really about the opportunity for each community. If we get these veterans and their family members to the point of service, or over the hurdles that might be in front of them, or to the goals they have for themselves, whether it be financially, professionally, educationally, then the value that they'll bring to our communities will be much greater. If you think about, for those of us that have worn a uniform or been a family member, the Department of Defense does an excellent job of really creating a cocoon, a bubble for us to live in, so that from day one, Matt knew he was a 35 uniform, and he knew what that glide path looked like. I was an 11 Alpha. I knew what an infantry officer glide path was for 30 years. I never questioned kind of my identity and professional place in life, whether it was a lieutenant or a captain. At the same time, you're always assigned to a unit. I was part of the 82nd Airborne, Big Red 1 in Germany, but you're always part of a battalion or air wing or a social group that is around you, that not only your coworkers, but they're also the men and women you go have a beer with, go work out with, you know, take care of each other's kids, help you out if you have a flat tire. So that social capital is important, and it allows us to stay focused on what we do in our professional identity. And the last thing is, every base, every installation, for the most part, has what it needs. There's daycares, there's doctors, there's dentists, there's the resources, so that there's no question when a family or a service member needs something, where to find it. I remember getting emails, Captain Bourne, report to the dental clinic on Friday. Like, you come up on a list, you show up, you're done. I mean, it's it's intentional, because the Department of Defense wants you to be good at what you're intended to do. Take off the uniform, you lose that mission, you lose that unit, and you lose all those support services. So starting over as an adult in your 30s or 40s or 50s who've never had to define those and really create that professional identity, that social network, and that support, that network of support services, can be a challenge. And from my perspective, is inside a community like Charlotte, we know that a 35 uniform, you know, can do a lot more than just work at an Apple store. The value that someone like Matt or any of you on this call can bring to a city like Charlotte could be immense. So, but if we're not aware of the fact that you've never had to maybe tackle these challenges, and we're not helping support and making these connections, bridging that gap, then you may not be as successful as possible, because you're learning these things. So the why is really to make our communities stronger, to make our cities, our towns, our schools, our neighborhoods, our companies stronger, so that streamlined approach that we all experience in the Department of Defense, we can get as close as possible on the civilian side. So, and Charlotte's in a unique place, because 6 years ago, we, like many communities, in that uptick from 26,000 nonprofits that support veterans to now, what, 40, as Matt mentioned, that all happened over the last about 10 years. And it was a response to that post-surge, you know, oh my gosh, the recession has hit, but it's really hit military families and veterans harder. What are we doing? And one thing that this community recognized was, we had great nonprofits, we had great companies. There was no one in the middle navigating, you know, taking ownership, that sort of servant leadership role. So our organization was created, but it was sort of the poor man's version of what now Jim McDonough has brought to 11 cities. So if you can imagine, we had one social worker and myself just running around trying to find the best employers to work with, and one veteran at a time, doing everything we could. But a lot of it was just relational and missed call slips, tons of emails, and really what every community is experiencing right now. So most social workers, most admissions officers are doing these things in their communities. But as soon as someone leaves an organization, or someone goes on maternity leave, or a program changes, the eligibility requirements change, then those providers and those veterans have to kind of relearn and restart and rebuild relationships by bringing this platform and this idea of networked and collective effort. Now you have nonprofits that are all supporting one another with that, like I said, that quarterback, that Charlotte Bridge Home role, and it really elevated our position as the, you know, the group that got sent everything that no one else had an answer to. Now we can really better serve our partner providers, so they can provide the best service. And I liken it back to being a platoon leader. If the LT was behind the machine gun or applying a tourniquet, it was probably a bad day. Not because I didn't know how, but because there were people that were better trained to do that. And it was my job to make sure they had what they needed, that my machine gun teams and my medic had what he needed, and had the space to do the best work that they can. And we do that right now with Goodwill for Employment Services, or Patriots Pass, Hire Heroes USA, understanding the capacity and the skill sets they have, and then applying them to each individual family's needs as appropriate. It's not really any different. The what isn't different than what we were doing 6 years ago. The how has changed significantly with the technology that Matt has mentioned, and the understanding roles of that again, that leadership role of being of not actually doing the work, but allowing those subject matter experts to do so. And what we've seen now is, in 2014 and 15, I couldn't tell you how many veterans asked for support, what services they were interested in, who supported them, and how long they took. But now I can tell you, over 2 years of performance, we've supported 2,700 unique veteran families. The number one need is employment. Last year alone, we had 1,046 requests for employment support that came through our door or one of the network providers' doors. And then the success rate of those services, whether it was resume support or career coaching or actually getting employed, was over 65%. So whether or not those numbers are good or bad is still a little early in the game. The fact that we can track that and we can see the success rate of services at Goodwill versus Hire Heroes USA, and we can actually have an informed discussion with the data and the anecdotal experience of veterans, it's changing the landscape here now 2 years in Charlotte on how we work together as a community and how we deliver services for families. It's become much more efficient, much more effective. And honestly, it would not have happened without the support of IVMF. And I'm not just drinking the Kool-Aid. I really do think you need that objective expertise to come into a community and listen, find out what's unique about Charlotte versus Pittsburgh versus Charleston, and then provide some resources and then allow the local community to drive those outcomes. Does that give you an idea, Matt? Does that help?
Yeah, that was great. I appreciate it. I guess this would be a good point to, pause if there are any questions before we maybe get into some of the benefits of the technology as I see it. And I know Blake will have some, hearing from, him being at the actual, the coordination center where the work's being done, the coordination's happening. In his market looks different than, from my perspective, but if there are any questions, we can definitely answer those now before we continue on. I don't see any posted, so I think we should be good.
Yeah, let's give it a few seconds. Let me see if anybody has any questions on the YouTube channel.
Okay, cool.
And if anyone has had that experience of maybe trying to navigate resources and can speak to that and maybe verify, I think it's a pretty common, as Matt said, there's a lot of data behind it, but until you've experienced that, it's a different experience to really go, wow, I don't know my way around a town, or I went to one agency and it wasn't the right place because I didn't serve in the right era, or I didn't deploy long enough. And then to be handed 15 pamphlets, who's got time to go to 15 agencies to find the right one, to play nonprofit roulette? And I think what we miss in the military are those things that we took for granted, that camaraderie, that unit, and that ability to navigate around base and find the services really pretty freely. So if you've got that experience and want to share too, let us know.
Okay, guys, I don't see any questions on YouTube, so you're good to proceed.
Okay, cool. So want to talk about a little bit about the technology that's behind AmericaServes. It's from Unite Us, which is a veteran nonprofit, said that completely wrong. A veteran-led organization based out of New York City. So two veterans basically understanding this very same problem and said, hey, let's make a technology to help solve this kind of problem, is essentially the short story of it, the Cliff Notes. And so we use that software. What it enables is the digital referrals that Blake, is referencing, where you're able to, these organizations to work together and be able to send those referrals to each other. But in addition to it, and these are the numbers that, Blake started to talk about, it tracks all of these different touch points and all of the activity within a community. And I think that's important for a number of different reasons. So for one, the allocation of resources. Everyone's going to say that their organization does the hard work. They're understaffed, they're overworked, etc. And there's only a limited amount of grants out there to get. Everyone, all these different nonprofits are vying for them. But how do we know where are the good organizations? The service delivery system, or the human service industry right now, there's not really much tracking regarding, who's doing a good job, how many different clients are seeing, what are some of these trends. But now we can take a look at, let's say, Pittsburgh, for example. There is a number of different organizations, and one of the big supporters of that area is the Heinz Endowments. Sure, you guys are all familiar with Heinz Ketchup. So they help support PA-Serves Greater Pittsburgh. They're one of a few funders there. And one of the small nonprofits that joined the network is named Operation Troop Appreciation. It was started by one woman, and they had, I think, like one or two people that helped with them. And they provide home goods, like welcome home kits for veterans and their families, and beds, like actual legit bedding. So it was, something that they would say, hey, we're getting a lot of requests. Well, when they joined the network, we were able to track that, yeah, they were the #1 service in demand. They had the most referrals being sent to this place because what? They actually give them some gas cards, some food, some gift certificates, a bed, like really awesome things. So now that we're able to track that data, when the Heinz Endowments went for their next cycle of giving out grants and things, they had the data to support, and were able to get some increased funding due to that. So if we're talking about, showing the work that you do, that's one reason. The next is if we're talking about delivering good services, from the moment you get sent a referral, if you're an organization, if there's 4 housing organizations in Pittsburgh, for example, when I get sent to one of them and that organization accepts it, that starts the timer. And then until they give me and correct my housing, for example, that's when that timer stops. So if we're able to see 4 different organizations, and about average, that takes 12 days for 3 of those, but one organization, it takes 30 days, then we might then we can look and say, wow, there's something wrong going with that 4th organization. Why are they taking, over double the time that the other 3 organizations are taking? Or for example, it's taking 12 days in Charlotte, but if we can compare the data, and in Charlotte, for example, it's only taking 6 days, what are they doing right in Charlotte? Why is housing only taking 6 days in Charlotte, but on average it's taking 12 days in Pittsburgh? Or, and as we see these 11 different markets, we can start to compare all of these different service categories, which range anywhere from benefits, education, to financial assistance, healthcare, housing, sports and fitness, volunteering. There's anything you can think of, there's a category for it, and we can start to compare, how are these services being delivered, and with what time and success. Are they able to find that person employment? Is it full-time employment, part-time employment? These are some of the different information that's tracked now, and we're able to compare. What is the limit of it is because it's never been tracked before, it's a little difficult saying, well, what they're doing in Pittsburgh is good. Because we don't know, did it get any better from 5 years ago? But what we can do is say, well, if we look at these 5 cities, it's better than these 5 that are being tracked. So that's one of the benefits of starting to have these different networks develop, is that we can compare, hey, it's taking 5 5 days in, these communities. Why is this community taking double for service delivery? So those are some of the benefits I see from the technology. I'm sure it looks different from an organization actually working with the clients and such. So I'm going to toss that over to Blake if he wants to cover some of the information that I missed. And
yeah, sure, I'll do that, and I'll also try to answer that question from Christopher that Elvis just put up on the thing. So, for anyone that's ever been on a long car ride with kids in the back seat who are hungry, the idea isn't, well, let's find a really nice restaurant to sit down and take our time and a steakhouse to put 2 toddlers in. It's not, we need a McDonald's right now. I need French fries and a glass of milk today. That is an immediate need that my family would have. But later on the line, my wife and I might be interested in going to a nicer restaurant. And it's not necessarily a judgment of what is better or worse. It's understanding what specific, you may be able to serve 1 million customers at McDonald's. You may only serve 100 customers at a nice restaurant, but recognizing the difference between those services, what it provides the people that do need those. And as Matt said, understanding not only the volume and the capacity, but then the quality and the outcomes of those services delivered, recognizing that the time and the place and the family's needs are what should drive that support. So for Christopher's question, if you live outside of those areas, I'd say there's some great national nonprofits that we work with here in the Charlotte market, but that have scales like Hire Heroes USA or Higher Purpose. .com. Those are 2 agencies that I think do good work and provide the individual career coaching that can maybe help. But individual to communities, I think there is a need for veterans and veteran serving agencies to identify the best types of employers. So if you live outside those networks, I would say try to find the nearest to you. I just got a call from someone I served with in OCS and basic training, and he lives in Denver and is looking for some employment support. There is not a network in Denver, but I have employer partners that we work with in Charlotte that hire in Denver. So Wells Fargo is in Denver, TIA is in Denver, Northwestern Mutual, and he's looking to get into financial services in Denver. So making those connections, it's a possibility that could happen. So I would look for any nonprofits that are in your area that specifically focus on employment, and also look for Rotary groups or Chamber of Commerce. And if there's individual leaders in those groups that are also veterans, they're usually your best point of contact as well. At least that's what I've seen in this space. So Matt, do you want to add to that?
I think you covered it well. I did realize I missed one, I believe, in Washington State up near Seattle. There's an additional market. So they're like our farthest west. And I posted a link that shows a map with all the different touch points of all of our different markets. But, unfortunately at this time, we're not everywhere. Hopefully, I just know 2 years ago when I first started, that map had 3 dots on it. So it's really grown. So hopefully we can make our way and start spreading out. As Blake said, there'll be, nearby markets and such. But if there aren't any, I don't have anything directly to add to that. Blake, do you want to talk about how the technology has helped, your organization, utilize in terms of, the referrals and, that type of aspect to it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so, and I'll try to tie it back to Christopher's question too. Employment, what's available. There's gonna be a lot of services that are out there, and what people are looking for can vary. So if you're a veteran who just got out, finished your MBA, or just left EBV, and you're trying to start up a new business, that employment support will look very different than a Vietnam era veteran who's been experiencing homelessness for the past decade, and the support that they need to reach their employment goals. And so knowing that we have those resources and that we can also triage and almost waterfall them, so that if there's resume support and general job coaching, then we start with Goodwill, a great local partner. But then if they're ready and they've advanced past that, then we move usually to Patriots Path, which does more career coaching and brand development for you as an individual, and helps gear you towards more financial service and white collar professions. But then understanding too that the scale and the scope of those employment providers don't have as much reach as I mentioned, Hire Heroes USA or Hire Purpose. And so then if someone is looking to leave the area, or if their spouse wants to move back to Kansas, we're not able to help. So we usually put them in touch with those national groups. O2O, I think, is also a great program through IVMF that can help make contacts across the country. So our ability to see service episodes and to think about the growth in the long term, it's basically staying with a family, recognizing that what you need today might not be what you need tomorrow, and that we can work through that, but also track how that progresses. I could go into details into, you know, I'm on the street, then I'm in the men's shelter, then I'm in transitional housing, then I'm in, you know, permanent supportive housing, and then maybe I've, you know, received enough support to be on my own and not need permanent supportive housing. That's a great glide path, you know, for someone that is experiencing homelessness. But it's going to be different for every person in every community. And this technology allows us to really start to gather the data, share the experiences, have a common operating picture, and see if we're getting better. You know, what was different about this month than last month? Are we doing a better job or worse job? And collectively, what can we do as 56 nonprofits in Charlotte to get better outcomes for our veterans? Because that's ultimately what matters.
Yeah, one thing that struck me as you were talking about is, you know, there's a number of organizations that say they coordinate and they collaborate. And really what that means is that they have, you know, some working groups where they get together and talk about, you know, a lot of the issues that are taking place within that community. But besides that, you know, they go back to being siloed. Or when they coordinate and collaborate, it just means you have a really robust Rolodex where you maybe have an inside person at some of these organizations. What I think this, you know, program aims to do is take that 3 steps higher, because there's that transparency aspect where you know what the organization, if you send a client, someone that you've worked with for 6 months, coaching them regarding getting them groomed to be, you know, ready for that job, and you send them to NC Works or Patriots Path, and you're hoping that they get them that job, you can actually log into the software. And since you are the person that sent that referral, you're able to follow up and find out, did that person get employment? What, you know, what did that, what was the end result of that? In addition, if you are that other organization, you understand that what you are doing is being captured inside that platform. So it makes, you know, these different organizations accountable for the service that they deliver. And that's what the end goal is. You know, if you guys have ever gone, I'm just going to use Apple, for example, to an Apple store, you've probably received an email regarding, well, how was your customer service? You know, how was that person that fixed your iPhone or whatever? And, you know, they take those really serious. Trust me, I work there. And we can do the same thing because, you know, we're going to be tracking how are these organizations providing the services that they claim to provide. How is their service comparing to the other ones? The other organizations within that community and such, you know. And then, yeah, Blake, sorry.
No, I think you're right. I think there's comparisons, but there's also a trust factor. I mean,
yeah,
our experience in the military is really based on trust. I mean, how often you walk up to someone else in uniform and you kind of eye them up and go, okay, Ranger tab check, you know, deployment tab check, like that trust. Or what's your rank? What our expectations are from a colonel versus a private, or a captain versus sergeant major, are different. But there's this awareness and trust factor that's built into the culture of the military. All those flags behind Matt that represent all the different branches, you know, we give each other a hard time, but there are real expectations that as an airborne paratrooper that I have for our load masters that kick us out the side of a plane, and I need them to do their job. They need me to do mine. It's very similar inside of community. If we can build and strengthen the trust between providers, the veteran, the family will feel that. They will not only get to experience great service at one agency, but the trust in knowing that I have a team around me, that I don't just have a bunch of random people who don't understand my full picture. but rather a care team of an employment provider, a housing support, maybe a buddy that runs at Team RWB. You build that network because the person that's helping with your education goals might not like to run on the greenway with you. But if they're all working in unison and making sure and covering down on what they're responsible for, the veteran feels more supported, the veteran will be more successful, and will also waste less time and resources across the board. So but without that common operating picture and that shared data, then everyone's working really hard, but no one fully understands one another or trusts one another. And that's one thing for the providers, but it always ends up being taken out on the veteran. They're the ones run around town. They're the ones that have to tell their story 45 times. And that's just not effective. And really from my perspective, not acceptable.
Hey guys, I just have a few questions for you. Can you guys cover a little about what type of services can veterans and their family members get through AmericaServes and North Charlotte Serves? And also, can you maybe talk a little bit about it, touch upon a process and eligibility for veterans and their family members? Like, what is that like? And so that way, if they have any questions, so they can get in touch with you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. Blake, if I take the first one, are you able to take the second one?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. So there's 13 different service categories that, any of the AmericaServes communities can fulfill. But to be honest, if you were to contact any of the AmericaServes communities or any of the networks saying you need assistance, they're going to do everything in their power. They've never turned someone away. I've even gotten emails from people in Idaho and Oklahoma saying, hey, I need assistance. And, we do everything we can to try and find at least some sort of a guide or a couple links to go. But essentially, I'll be honest, this is going to be just me reading through some of them. But if you have any questions, just type in that message or, send to Elvis a message. But benefits, if you want to get, assistance getting your GI Bill or anything like that, they can assist with that. Disability claims, education. So if you want to go back to school, if you're struggling with school or you're trying to figure out what school or what university is maybe right for you as you're moving back to a new community. Employment, of course, financial assistance to include financial management classes, debt consolidation assistance, various different things like that. They can find resources, healthcare, housing, which for many markets, housing is one of the #1 needs. I know in the PA Serves Greater Pittsburgh, housing is the #1 requested need. There is legal support, meeting supporters and vets, which is kind of one of the social activity components, mentoring, sports and fitness, spouse and family support, and volunteering. So a lot of these have subcategories to them. I know spouse and family support, I think childcare fits under there. And some of these, get broken down a number of different layers. But it is pretty comprehensive. I know they tried to cover everything and kept it pretty broad so that, in terms of employment, that's a huge range of employment. Whether you're just kind of curious about what's out there, if you want to just make more, kind of move your way up to you need, or you want full-time employment, everything in between there, or just resume assistance, that a lot of different things are covered within that. Blake, did I miss anything?
No. The one thing I would mention, I think, as you talked about it, made me realize we haven't quite covered is what does Dallas have that Charlotte doesn't? We may have a dearth of employment resources here, but what we might not have, or use the Pittsburgh example Matt gave earlier of the woman who runs an organization who actually gives beds away. So we have a furniture bank, but it's not veteran centric, and it's not as specific as that woman's program. So is that a need? Is that a gap in the services? Maybe. But if we're not capturing that information, if we're not keeping track of who's raising their hand and asking for these services, and unfortunately, if we don't have that service, we do have to say no. It's not because we don't care about people. It's just because if it doesn't exist in Charlotte, North Carolina, then it doesn't exist. People get turned away and are told no all the time in every community around, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know anything, or I'm not sure, or you never really get a straight answer. What we're able to do now is say, we've scoured this region and we don't have that service today. But what I can say is a year from now, if we've had enough, is it one or two people that need that service, or were there dozens that requested that service? Well, maybe there is a need for that organization, rather than just the anecdotal. I met a guy once who, needed a certain, free coffee for veterans, and now there should be an organization for coffee. Well, maybe I'm the only guy that drinks cold coffee. So true gap analysis on what those services are. Do we have enough overlap? What are the underlaps in communities? Because those are big buckets that probably do exist in every city and every AmericaServes market, like Matt said, but to what depth and capacity we can now start to see the truth behind that.
Blake, I wanted to say one point. Also, there has been a number, I want to say a large number, but I know in our AmericaServes coastal market, someone requested assistance because they wanted a big screen TV. Swear to God. So that also was a service that, they weren't able to fulfill. Yeah, so do I. Elvis, what was the second part of the question that you had asked?
The process, right?
Yes, I would just like if you guys can talk about eligibility for veterans. Is there any requirements, or is there any what is the process like for them to call and request for a service?
Great question.
How long will it take for them to get it?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that question. So, so I can speak for here in Charlotte, the way we're set up and the way we're designed here. So veterans can walk to our door. We're right on 7th Street. You can Google Charlotte Bridge Home. They can walk through our door Monday through Friday and sit down with one of us, and we can capture that information. They can call us on the 1-800 number, which is on the AmericaServes site, and they can also make a service request. So if they go to that link, AmericaServes.org, further up, click on Get Assistance, or NCServes.org, you can hit Get Assistance, and basically it says, give us the 5 W's. I'm Blake, I was in the Army, I'm a veteran, and I'm looking for employment support. That will digitally get sent to our team here, and then we will proactively reach out to you within usually 24 to 48 hours max. I'd get a little bit more detail around what your goals are, as Matt mentioned earlier, what sort of support you're looking for. Make that referral and that strong match, and then our expectation is usually within about another 48 hours that nonprofit or organization reach out to the veteran rather than sending the veteran around town. Now, the criticality of those different needs can usually speed up the lack of capacity for some. We have one small legal service provider here, so they're a little bit slower, but we recognize that, but it's the only one we have. Eligibility wise, anyone that has worn a uniform of any branch, any era, any time, any discharge status can reach out to an AmericaServes market for support, and their family members. We consider any, since most of us are veterans, dependent, anyone that is inside of that nuclear family or that is inside of the house. If you're 45 and didn't serve, but you're out on your own and your father did, there's probably great services for folks. But if you've served, or if you have children or family members that are dependent on that service member or veteran, then we'll at least have that conversation. The question and the eligibility part, to answer Elvis's question more directly, depends on the service they're requesting. There are lots of programs out there, 40,000 plus, but they do have to draw the lines. Maybe they accept post 9/11, maybe they only do pre 9/11, maybe you have to live in a certain county or have a certain disability or certain discharge status. For us, the navigation and the service that comes with finding the right answer, it doesn't matter. Any service, any era, any branch. But what we have run into challenges is that people fall a little bit too high above the financial threshold for certain services, or they live outside the county for where that one service is provided. And we'll try to find a workaround. We do everything we can to look at local, state, county, federal benefits, national resources. But again, it also provides an opportunity to capture that information and to say, look, we've had 200 families last year that asked for housing support that fell just above the threshold for AMI, or the area median income. So they weren't eligible for the programs that existed, and we weren't able to serve them. Maybe we should think about that. And that's a conversation we can have and inform our decision makers on the local level on whether or not we should move that threshold. So so calling in to the 1-800 number in each of the markets, website, service request, self-referral, walking in and doing it individually, or going to any of those nonprofits themselves. They should be able to connect you as well through the network. So those would be the best ways. And I would say the special sauce in the network is that regardless of eligibility and background and all those nuances that our DD-214s all look different, that's what the coordination centers are supported to do, so that we can figure that out for you and with your families, rather than as you kind of go it alone, hack through the nonprofit world.
Yeah, Blake, I think that was definitely a point that I missed when I was describing the pre versus post AmericaServes community. So, here in Charlotte, one of the things that, IVMF as that parent organization has requested for Charlotte Bridge Home, who is the coordination center for AmericaServes Metrolina, is that they become experts on the eligibility requirements within the providers in this network. So there's 56 different providers in this network. They all have different, I'm just going to use, if they had 5 different housing providers, there might be 5 distinct eligibility requirements for those. If before AmericaServes Metrolina was in place, you might go to one and have no idea if you qualified or not, or you got sent there or referred to there through, the time that you spent at NC Works, and that person didn't take the time to, really to look into your eligibility or, whatever. There's tons of different details. They sent you to, provider X, and you didn't qualify, and, you're frustrated. Well, now Blake and his team understand, and before they send you anywhere, make sure that they understand that you're eligible for these services. And that's one of the great things about these networks, is understanding kind of the ecosystem of that community. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to know, and I feel like someone's got to do it, because otherwise we all just get a lot of I'm sorry, we can't provide that service. I'm sorry, you don't fall inside of our eligibility requirements. I'm sorry that's not a program we offer any longer. And that's frustrating when you're trying to do what's best for your family or trying to reach a goal. So it is our responsibility to find that support, know the difference, know that there's 22 agencies in Charlotte that have something to do with housing, but their eligibility criteria are all over the place. Their funding and availability of funding changes constantly. So our team tries to keep as their finger on the pulse as much as possible, so that we can help provide the services, and again, narrow the target for the family so they get to the service they need at the right time at the right place. And there's also, I think, an expectation of, whether it's the Heinz Endowment in Pittsburgh or Walmart and the Levine Foundation in Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, the county that Charlotte is in, it invests in veteran services, and Bank of America invests in veteran services. But what we don't know is, are all those investments working together? Is there alignment? And not too dissimilar than the example that Matt gave about the Heinz Endowment, we now have one of the larger funders in the area asking us, well, Blake, who is providing the best service? Who is who's had the most service requests? I'm not making a judgment call. I'm able to provide that data to that organization to say, we've had the most employment requests, but we've covered down and had a pretty good success success rate. Our legal services is lacking significantly. We had that discussion with that funder, and then they funded Wake Forest University to open up a legal clinic in Charlotte that wasn't existing before. So coming this fall, we're going to expand the services for veteran legal services in Charlotte because of that conversation, so that Wake Forest can join the fight alongside of our current legal provider. So it's really been able to shape decision making on the ground, which is, again, is impactful for the veteran.
Thank you, guys. So
Yeah, any questions on YouTube?
Not at this moment. So you want to give it a couple seconds and see if anybody has any questions?
Sure.
Yeah. And just for everyone's, kind of awareness, if, there aren't any questions we can talk about, me and Blake talked about, ending with kind of our thoughts on where, what the future could hold or what our goals are for the AmericaServes program. So, if there's not any questions, or that's where the conversation will head if there aren't any questions.
Very good at YouTube. No question. Oh, there's one question from Dolly in the chat box.
Sure, yeah. Dolly, okay, so that's helpful. So there are, it depends on what's in your area. Unfortunately, there's not like usually a legal office like there was on Fort Bragg. I remember updating my will on Fort Bragg and going to the legal office. But in our area, there's an organization called Legal Services of the Southern Piedmont, which is just this region. A lot of areas, a lot of states also have legal aid, AID, and those are, they are deliberately two separate agencies because of what the types of legal things they work on. So the primary things they focus on are discharge upgrades, benefits appeals, NVLSP, the National Veteran Legal Service Project. They do help do benefits upgrades, but for wills and things like that, I would look for your local legal service provider, usually called like Legal Services of, and then the geography, or legal aid, because a lot of times they will also do that. Or what we have found is, because there's the legal landscape, like healthcare is very broad and very nuanced, we lean on them for those questions. And if there are individuals, lawyers in the area that are willing to do pro bono support, then they'll make that connection as well. So in some cases, they're not legally allowed to give certain legal support for free. They have to charge you, but it's usually like a nominal fee of $25. And so I would see if there's an organization in your area like that, and even if they can't provide that service, they can likely direct you to that. The other place I would look are either on the state level or on your local county municipality level, which is the bar, the local. For us, it's the Mecklenburg County Bar Association or the North Carolina Bar Association. They often have a pro bono kind of arm where lawyers that are barred lawyers that sign up and basically say, I'm willing to provide this type of support for free. And there's usually a coordinator for the Bar Association that has that information. At least I know that exists in North Carolina and in Mecklenburg County. So if you go to the Bar Association, you can probably call and see if there's someone there, and they might be able to direct your question as well. Again, given that you don't have a serves market. Does that help? Great. Matt, is there anything that you know of legal-wise that I didn't cover?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I was going to say it kind of depends on the network. I wasn't sure, if you were asking kind of like what's the most common one. Because it's typically like the discharge status updates or wills have been the two most common services requested. But like I don't want to say the quality, but who will be the provider just is very dependent on the actual location.
And the other thing is, a lot of schools, and the couple I know of, University of Connecticut, Yale, William and Mary, now Wake Forest University, have legal clinics, and so you can go, and they're law students, but it's their way to learn how to do certain types of law. And so sometimes they'll have special focuses, and usually it's tied back to what that law school is known for. But several of them have veteran legal clinics. That's a growing, Wake Forest is, again, one of the newer ones. So I would see if any local universities that have law schools have a veteran legal clinic.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's actually who Pitt Law Practicum is, the group in Pittsburgh that is one of the main people.
Yeah.
So.
No, happy to help. I mean, that's the thing. Like, there's so many resources out there. How do we know which is the best one? And I'd love to know if Dali, if where your geography is. That ideally, if Matt and IVMF continue to push hard and do this, and they'll help seed and support communities to build this capability, so that you can direct that question to someone who's boots on the ground, kind of a battle space owner, to help answer that. Unfortunately for now, or fortunately, we've got 11 communities and hopefully more to come.
Elvis, have there been any additional questions via YouTube, or should we?
That's it. You guys good to close. If you have anything else to give the audience out there, and because we already are at 1:30, and I know you guys have a 2 o'clock appointment, so I don't want to keep you too long. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks everyone for joining. My closing thoughts are, as we've mentioned before, there are 11 communities. I've been told that, we have like 3 or 4 that are going to be soon to be coming, with Rhode Island, Dallas, possibly one in Philadelphia, and then the one that I mentioned in like Washington, D.C. area. But my hope and dream with this program is that, we have that nationwide. If anyone's familiar with the network effect, if you think about eBay, for example, if there's only 20 people on eBay, it's not really that powerful of a tool. You're only selling your stuff to a couple different people, but it becomes a lot more powerful the more people using it. So imagine, if North Carolina, which has 4 networks within this state, if every state had at least 1 or 2, the military connected individuals are a very transient population. If I were to move from Pittsburgh to Cincinnati to Los Angeles, wherever, if there's connected communities, not only could my file go with me, but also I could, before I even get there, get connected with the local team red, white, and blue, get connected with the local employment agency, or, some people regarding housing or whatever. So it's really about, using technology to help better service delivery. And I think as our nation starts adopting, these different technologies and such, the goal is to get that connected, interwoven communities and stuff. So be on the lookout.
Yeah, and I'll just jump on that real quick and say, everyone's heard the statement, it takes a village. I think for too long as a country, we've expected the VA to take care of all of our veterans. And this is in no way, shape, or form to detract for what the VA does provide. The communities can't do what the VA provides. The healthcare, the benefits, the education support, those are things that the VA does as well as it can. But there's lots of things, like the question that Christopher just had, or Dolly just had, the VA isn't equipped to do. So it takes a village. It takes local municipalities, local nonprofits, national nonprofits to coordinate services and recognize, while a service dog might be really impactful for one veteran today, it's not going to get Christopher a job. It's not going to help Dolly with her will. And the variety of people that have served our country and the variety of communities they live in are so immense that there might be a legal service right down the road. But without navigating, without knowing, I mean, I just checked where Riverside County was outside LA. It's a full-time job in some cases to try to navigate that. So if we can help understand that each of our services, each of the opportunities and programs that are out there for veterans provide a specific niche, but that together we're a lot stronger, then I think we can actually start to really overcome some major challenges. I think for too long now we've been so focused on individual programs and trying to get all veterans through our specific programs, rather than saying the people that need this service are the best types of customers for me, and that's okay. But I need the folks on my left and right. So so I would say, if you're in your communities, if you can challenge the nonprofits in your area, the leaders in your area, to think on a systems level, and come together, have those collective conversations to know one another, to look past the individual program offerings, then I think we can all start to become a lot more successful. We'll get what we need, and we'll also be, invest back in our communities through, being good neighbors, good employees, in a much more impactful way. One last thing for Dali, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. The University of Southern California School of Social Work, they have a military social work program that's really renowned across the country. Dr. Hassan, who's now with the Cohen Veteran Network, used to run that program. Since they're in LA and social work is what they do, I can't imagine they may not have an idea. So recognizing Riverside County is a little bit outside of LA, that's where I would start, is the School of Social Work at USC.
Thank you, Blake.
Thank you, Elvis. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Okay, guys, so let's give it 2-3 seconds. If anybody has any questions, please ask now, or otherwise, thank you guys so much for doing this presentation and informing us more about AmericaServes and some other services out there that are beneficial and valuable for our veterans and their family members.
Thanks, Elvis.
Thank you, Blake.
Thanks, Elvis. Thanks everyone for joining.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna stop broadcasting right now. We don't have any questions. Oh, actually, just saying thank you so much for information. Okay.
Great.
So I'm gonna stop broadcasting right now.